Phil Lockhart. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Credera.
And my name is Charles Levitz. I'm the lead experience analyst at Credera as well.
A little bit about Credera. We are a global boutique consulting firm, and we are actually the management consulting and technology arm behind Omnicom, which is a large agency holding company. And what we are here to talk to you about today is content and all the different aspects of it. So thank you for your time, and we're excited to kick this off. The first thing we want to talk about is it's content, yes, but it matters, and it matters quite a bit. 49% of media is actually driven by content. So the performance of it is actually impacted. So if you get your content right, you can actually lower your cost of media, make sure it's more performant. But it's not just media, it's all content. It's everything from your CRM to your web content. Our conversation today is going to talk specifically about web content and the impact that you can make. We're going to talk about, if you're a large company, some of the things that you can do, and if you are a small company, some of the tools and things that you can do. So even if you don't have the impact or the global expansion of a large company, there are many things you can do, and we're going to help prepare you for that. We're going to set the stage here. A lot of this is about AI and how this can help impact this. So what we're seeing here is actually a picture, and I think a lot of people have seen this before. This is an image, and this is one aspect of AI, which is ML, so machine learning, with object detection. So what you're seeing in here is that analysis has been performed on this image, and it's able to bring back the objects that are within it. So it's not just looking at the entire image or the asset that's there. It's seeing that there's a person, there's a computer, there's a laptop in there, and the numbers on the right are just basically saying, what's the confidence level of this? So what this allows you to do is not just say holistically, what is this image, but the elements that are in there. For instance, if you double click it on the person, it says, this is a female. That matters, right? The demographics, they're smiling, what kind of sentiment is here? So if you take all these different pieces together, it also brings forth an overall depiction. There's not just the picture and the objects within it, but it's all how the pieces come together to describe what's going on there. So when you're picking an image, you have to be mindful of what's being portrayed. And AI can actually analyze that image and actually come back and bring back different sentiments. Talk about collectively of how these objects come together, but then actually talk about, hey, this is a tranquil expression, with this individual there, and just a dedication to work, things like that. So it's okay, that's great, that seems pretty neat, but how is this actually useful? So in a couple different aspects. And so what we've done is we've worked with companies to actually take this information, and this is all description of this information. If you have all these different attributes, you can go find them and reuse them easier. Because you say, I need to find an image of a woman with a laptop, and these different aspects of it, so you can reuse that content. So content reuse is very important for it as well. But then also what we want to do is make sure we have this data associated with it, because if we want to create a personalized experience to present this to the consumers, and make sure it matches with who you're speaking with, that audience, we can actually deliver that image in real time to the customer. We want to make sure that resonates. So it's the combination of the image, but then also the combination of the context and things around it, so we have to be very mindful of that. So ways that we've helped companies in the past is that we've learned a few things. One is that content matters, and in the whole image itself. As the production quality, they seem to follow the patterns and the brand images that you're looking for. Yes, that's important, but even more so, the objects within matter a lot. So we've worked with very large companies, and we've actually taken all of their media assets and all of their web assets, all their CRM aspects, videos, images, and we've run them through machine learning and actually come up with all the different metadata. But then we've combined that with their performance data, so we can actually take a look and we go, can we find some trends on things that are actually helpful? Which campaigns do well, which assets within that campaigns do well, and then across all those different assets and campaigns, which specific objects are making the biggest impact on it. And the thing to remember is that impact can be positive or it can be negative. For instance, we've learned with one of our clients is that, hey, if the individual's holding a cell phone, it actually has a positive impact of 15%. Whereas if for that same audience, and it's very specific to the audiences, if there's artwork in the background, it actually has a negative 7 to 15% impact on it. So what that means is that you have to be mindful of what is in your photography, but with the impact of Gen AI, you can add stuff and you can remove stuff. So that actually makes a huge impact within this, and it allows you to do more things with content. And the last thing is that data underpins it. So we've talked about the fact that you need your performance data tied to your campaigns, tied to your imagery, so that you can actually understand and kind of correlate this. But the last piece is that you need to actually understand where that asset is being delivered within the journey. So is this an asset that's at the awareness or the acquisition piece, because that matters. So when you think about it, it's who they are and where they are. So those are some high-level things that we've been able to determine, and it's been using customized solutions, large data scientists with this, which not everyone has access to. And we want to make sure we talk through and present some things where if maybe you don't have the ability to do all those things. So we're going to continue on with a pharmaceutical example. Moderna was here sharing some examples of some great A/B tests and some great keys on that. We're going to take the same context. This is an illustrative image of some web content, and what we're being depicted here is an individual and is basically in a self-care type moment. Administrating it with an auto-injector of a specific medication. And the important thing is this is like, when is this important? This is a very helpful image, and all the context and things are on there, but if it's not the right time, it could have some challenges, and we'll talk through all those. And the reason why this is important is that when you get into highly personalized experiences, you can actually create the entire experience to target and make sure it's tailored specifically to an audience or demographic, as well as how they manage their condition. We've done this with a large pharmaceutical companies, so that when we're able to detect maybe the way that they manage their condition, is it through diet? Is it through research? Is it through fitness? We can change the images to actually have fitness things that are there. We can take all the help information that is surfaced about exercise, and bring that to the front, because instead of having all these things just you have to self-discover, we want to tailor that to the individual and bring it to the forefront for them. So if you take this look and you go, hey, this looks like a great image, but how do we use this and when is it important? So if we go through some constructs here is, well, what if you're not a man? What if you're not Caucasian? What if you're an older patient? What if you haven't seen a physician yet? And what if you're nervous about needles? So all these things matter. The first couple pieces are, do you know me? And the second pieces are, do you know me right now? Specifically, I haven't seen a doctor yet. I'm not even really aware of all the different benefits that could be provided here. Now I'm showing some self-care information on this. Always helpful once you get into that phase, but what part of the journey you're in really matters. So when we talk about this, yes, content matters, but context matters even more. Back to the same 2 points. Do you know me? And more importantly, do you know me right now? So we talked about things that we've done with custom solutions to bring AI intelligence into this, but what if you're not a large company? What if you don't have like a data science team to do this, or a lot of technical resources? There are still things that you can do, and everyone says like, hey, just give me AI, give me a box of AI, or give me 2 boxes of AI. It's actually how you use AI, either machine learning or other principles, specifically to do activities. So we're going to break it down, and we're going to show you how you can actually take some of those things and actually put them to use. So we've got 5 rules, and we want to make sure that this helps you ensure content matches your context that you're trying to deliver. The first one, audience. You need to know who you're trying to connect with. Oftentimes you'll be making just a broad image, but like in this day and age, people want to be connected to it. So you have to be thinking about your content, not only in just the broad to help everyone out until you actually identify the specific target audience. You need to actually do it as well and be thinking about it for your different segments, your different personas. Secondarily, message and tone. What do you want to convey to them? If you're talking about something as important as a medical condition and treating that, you want to make sure you're using the right tone and you're expressing it at the right time within it, because at different stages you go through different pieces, so making sure your elements are aligned to that. Timing. That goes hand in hand, which we just mentioned. Do you know where they are in their journey? How are they managing their condition? What is their awareness? Is it pre-doctor? Is it first prescription? Is it their 3rd prescription? All those elements matter on what you show, and from a content and the imagery perspective. Connected assets. So you might have an image. That image might be great, but if you put it next to some words, it might just lose everything. It might just fall flat. So does all the different pieces connect together? And the last thing, there's just general structures and practices about content that we need to make sure that you're following. So there's industry best practices from a CX perspective, from a usability perspective, making sure those are there. So if you combine all these different things together, you can address the biggest impact of content with it. And there's also some tools that you can use with this. From an audience perspective, if you use Cloudinary, for example, you can actually go and take a look at your images, and you can use it. Automatically pipes into Google Cloud and Amazon Rekognition, and it actually bring back specific information about all the tagging things that you have with it. Message and tone. So with this as well, you can just bring in your content and actually ask ChatGPT, what is the sentiment on it? You know, does that match up to what you're expecting at that time? Customer journey, map out the customer journey, make sure that you're understanding when you're delivering this content, where they're at, what are they going through, what are their pains, what do they want to hear. Miro is just an example of just a tool that can, you know, bring in either linear or non-linear templates of how you can manage that journey. We recommend that you map that out and use that so that when you're looking at these experiences, it's in context of your customer. Connected assets. Within this, you can use Adobe Firefly to actually do generative AI to start creating things that are specific to tone. You can use text to image, where you can actually type the tone, you can bring in the audience information and generate images that are specific to that. Structure and practices. A lot of the times you might have your in-house own guidelines, heuristic design patterns that you want to use. But if you don't, Baymart Institute, you can sign up for that, and they've got, you know, over 1,000 different guidelines that you can look at specific to different pages. It's a starting point. These are all the different things if you don't have these large departments, and you can combine all those things together. So let's take a look at that last image again, and let's think through it. It's like, well, we know that our target is actually a woman in her 50s who's African American and lives in the Atlantic area. That last image didn't quite match to it, did it? If you looked at the demographic of the person in it, wasn't going to resonate. Message and tone is that at this stage, the treatment can have a real positive impact on quality of life. That wasn't expressed in the image either, so making sure we have that. Our target hasn't yet seen a physician, so what matters is how treatment may benefit her. So making sure that we illustrate that versus, you know, how do you do self-care, how do you actually administer, that's later down the road. Connected assets. So actually making sure that the images themselves, looking at them, making sure that this message that we just talked about that we want to make sure resonates is something that's illustrated, you know, and depicted within it. And the last thing is like, you're going to have some information that's associated with it. Let's make sure we got some best practice around the content that's associated. Example would just be is this, your call to action needs to be a certain size so that it makes sure that you know, it's very explicit to the individual, and then also it's stage aware so that you can make sure that you're expressing the right words to bring them to the action that's in the moment. So when we go back and look at that image, like maybe something like this would have been the most important thing. It's like, okay, yeah, these are very different, but like when you're creating home pages and you're redesigning the entire site to make sure you land and deliver content in real time with it, you need to have all these different assets available to you. And this expression is like, wow, this resonates because it's a woman. It's my demographic. And I'm actually expressing these things that are meaningful for me. So although that other piece of content is helpful, in this moment, this one would resonate much better. So walking through each one of those steps helps make sure you can review. So what would be the next step to do if you're going back on Monday to take a look at this? It's, okay, let's actually understand our major path, your primary pathing analysis on this to say, here are the pages that most people go through. Let's take a look at the content. Let's look at just those elements and let's see when people are going through it and are we contextually aware of this, you know? And if you can answer the questions of, with this target audience, because you're gonna be driving specific people there, do you know me? And more importantly, do you know me right now with what I'm going through? So we talked about all these different tools. What we wanted to do was make sure that actually the combination of these tools actually would be useful. So we've seen clients use these in different silos, and we thought, what if we actually built a solution that combined each of these individual tools into something meaningful that actually followed the practices and really our methodologies that we have. And Charles is going to walk through an example of how we've created something using those specific tools in an e-commerce setting to highlight some opportunities.
That sounds great. Thank you, Phil. All right, if you go to the next slide and actually launch the demo. So let's set the stage here, right? You have identified that there's some drop-off happening in your sales funnel on the product's details page. And we know that, right, Content Square is second to none, actually figuring out that those drop-offs might happen, but actually identifying what element on a page is underperforming, and more importantly, why, that can be challenging. And that can be time consuming because it typically requires skill set from multiple teams. Right? So what we, as Phil mentioned, what we wanted to do is see if we could combine all of those themes, all of those tools that typically are used in a siloed, and see if we could really make them work in a very practical way for our teams. So this is what we've done here. And the way it works is really going through 4 steps. First, ingesting a markup of a page, including text and content. It then runs them against a set of best practices. Those could be your own, or it could be external. It will flag which practices are being violated or unmet. But it doesn't stop here. It goes one step further and actually provides recommendations for new content, new images, and you will see even really new context for those images. So what's seeing here is, as mentioned, a product detail page for an e-commerce website, a beautiful blue luggage, and you will see in the top right corner, there's a little pop-up, right, that displays all the different best practices that we have for a product detail page, and we'll see that in just a second. The color coding behind them, right, and it's clear that it is obviously validating some of them, and when you double-click into a specific best practice, it actually explains what this is about. We wanted our team to actually do something with that, right? It's one thing to just know that it's being unmet, it's something else to know what to do about it. So once you click into one of those best practices, and we'll see that again in just a few seconds, in black and white, it will provide clear recommendations as to what to do. So we know here, right, just looking at the page, the description, the images, I think that's the one we're gonna be double clicking into, right? Only 2 images, and not really in a lifestyle setting, only 2, no videos, no close-ups, and you will see in just a second that this is probably where the tool is gonna take us to. So if we just wait a few more seconds, and we'll see the actual outputs of our tool. And I think, Phil, we can quickly talk about, right, I think you went through a slide that talks about some of the tools that we're using, right, and actually leveraging 2 or 3 of those tools that you mentioned on the slide. So here's an example of those recommendations that really details exactly where in the code those could be enhanced. But we know that some of your marketers, right, they might not have a development background. So just giving them the tool to very easily identify what to change or to tell their development team exactly what to update on the web page. You see that it's clearly detailing, okay, those are the optimizations that you could see, that you could make. So implementing more product images in different settings, in different contexts, right? All of that, and actually providing examples of what that would look like, right? Phil talked about Firefly. This is exactly the tool that we've used here to come up with those recommendations. But Phil talked about context, and I think this is where that makes this tool very different and, you know, somewhat on the edge, is that you can actually add some specific target audience of contextual clues for those images and get even more contextualized visual for your website. So again, going back to what Phil was saying, it's not just about showing customers that we understand them, but that we know them. It's making sure that we know them now. All right, I think we're gonna have a couple of questions.
What's the minimum investment that brands need to make to optimize content? That's a good question. Charles, you want to
Yeah,
take
absolutely.
this
I think that really a very common questions that we get from our clients, and really the myth that it will take huge investments to optimize content. Again, content is something that they have, and what we've seen is really just leveraging what they have, and with maybe a couple of $100, if not $1,000, right? Nothing more than that. Brands can really make the most of what they already have and truly optimize their website experience, the customer experience with better visuals. As Phil mentioned, right, almost 50% of performance can be attributed to content. So making the most of what you already have is a really quick way to have a great return on investment, which I think leads us to the next question.
That's great. What's the fastest path to return on investment? And it's kind of tied to that. So I think the first thing is like taking an approach that's specific to how much investment have you made and what's the potential return. So you're asking, you know, how much should you invest? It's like, well, what could that return be? It's going to be different for all companies. So keeping that in mind. As mentioned, it was a few $100s, but the fastest path specifically is if you can tie it to media on that. So that's usually where your biggest spend is going to be. And since it has such an inherent and intrinsic value to that, tying it back to that, that's going to be your best business case internally. So that's usually where our customers ask, is like, well, point us to the spot and how much investment should we make and what should we do to set expectations for our company on what this is going to be. The next question that's there is, what's the biggest digital fails you have seen? It's a good question. There's a lot. I would say one that we've seen, and you know, it is with the content. Actually, it probably ties back to the best practice and structure. Is that, and it was on an e-commerce site, and we had a client that was struggling because they made some changes. They actually did a redesign on their website, and the performance dropped incredibly. So they were seeing a huge drop off on day one on it, and they had to figure out like what the challenge was. So we used some analysis on it, and this is actually where tools like Content Square come in handy. Is that we're able to try to figure out how to actually identify where the problem was. In this case, it was specific to mobile users, and it was on the product details page. And what had happened is that there was a non-standard use of jQuery on the add to cart button. So based on the browser and based on the mobile situation, it was as if you went to click it, it would move on the screen, the add to cart. So you actually couldn't engage. So you were actually watching the video sessions of someone chase a add to cart button. So it's like, oh my goodness. And it was like one video. It's like, okay, there's another video. So it's like, yes, this is where the issue was. We're able to address just a couple lines of code and put that back out into production, and just completely changed the dynamics, and just the revenue started coming back up. So that was incredible. So that was probably one of the most interesting and kind of funny things to watch from a video session, I would say. Most surprising content analysis you've done? There's a couple things that come to mind. One in particular, I guess, two things and from the same situation. It was, we touched on it, it was the first time actually looking at the impact of specific objects within the image or within videos. So literally looking and seeing that with statistical significance, we could see for this specific target audience that cell phones resonated for them, but artwork didn't. And to me, that was just kind of astonishing, because it was like within the specific industry, it didn't seem like that would have been a meaningful thing. But since we analyzed so much content, did so much analysis, ran it across the campaigns, and came back with significance, we could see that. We tested it. We actually produced more content with that, and we saw the lift that was generated from that. So that was one thing that was very interesting. So it's I think one of the things that came from this, and this client in particular said, we know we can target anyone that we want. The tools allow you to be able to do that. The biggest thing right now is that, like, will that content resonate with them? Can we figure out how to do that? So it's like, that was an example of finding the different elements within it. And the last piece was just understanding that you're contacting people multiple times. So the use of those specific and usually brand specific elements they have to train a model on of understanding. If you use those elements too often, it can also have decay and actually drop off. So in this case, we saw that if this company displayed more than 3 times this specific object within their messaging, the customer just shut down. They didn't want to engage anymore, which were 2 things. So it's like the object and the frequency, and it was just like trying to understand, do you know them, and what specifically about them right now makes sure that they don't want to engage on that. We just want to take a moment to thank you. So it was a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you. Hopefully some of this information will resonate and provide some guidelines or some suggestions that will help improve your work come Monday. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. Merci.